Hello and welcome to Toonami Preflight. I'm Gil.
I'm Jason.
And today we're taking a fanciful journey through... Fantastical dism journey through Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit, some of our favorite fantasy novels. We've got some sneak peek One Punch Man style for this week's One Punch Man episode and next week's Labor Day One Punch Man Marathon Extravaganza.
One Punch Man? Like Anpanman? One Punch Man. One Punch Man is the little known Jamaican brother of One Punch Man.
That's actually our ska cover band that Jason and I tour conventions with. I feel like we've probably exhausted
One Skank Man. No, I think we can go on forever with that. But anyway, let's talk about Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit, which is a show that aired on Adult Swim Action in the dark days of 2009.
Started in 2008.
So, right, it came back in 2009, right? So, Moribito is based on a series of light novels, which are sort of set in a fictionalized version of Asia. So there's like a Japan analog and a China analog and a Korea analog, but it's not actually those places. But it's essentially a historical fantasy set in a fake Asia. And it stars, what's the main character's name? I always forget her name.
Balsa.
Balsa. So that's her, Balsa. She's a spear-carrying warrior.
Badass.
Who's basically like a Ronin. She's sort of wandering around, and the story is she's atoning for the deaths of 8 people that were close to her that she had to kill, and so she is going to save 8 people to make up for it. So she's down to her last one at the beginning of the series when she saves a young prince whose cart overturns, and she's invited to spend the night at the palace by the queen and or the empress, and the empress gives her a mission. So the little boy who is going to be the heir to the throne has been possessed, or they think is possessed by a water demon, and she needs her to take the boy and protect him and hopefully get him cured. So the
emperor's going to have him killed.
Yeah, the emperor's going to have his son killed because he thinks he's possessed by a demon and that's bad for the people.
He also doesn't want to show nepotism. Feels like maybe there'd be a little bit of favoritism in not killing your demon.
If it was you, and if it was, anybody can get a water demon. Nobody's special.
They're not my rules. They're the rules.
So it aired originally. So this show came to us, and it was created by Production IG, which is why it looks so beautiful. This show came to us from Kenny Adome, and yes, but also from Kenny Adome and our friends at Production IG. They asked us to put it on the air. They basically gave it to us super cheap because we were not that interested in it, just looking at it. But then once we saw it, we thought it was cool. So it ran on Adult Swim, and it ran for 10 episodes, and then we were told, oops, we got to let the dub catch up. The dub is taking longer than we thought. So we had to run another 10 we had to rerun the first 10, and then we had to pull it for a while because the dub was still not ready. And people, I went back and looked at like the forums and the boards, and people were like pretty pissed off that it was pulled with no explanation.
I do feel like, in hindsight, perhaps the communication could have been a little clearer as to the whys.
Sure.
But it was the early age of the internets, but it was like 10 episodes and then replay them and then stop, and then a year after the first one ran, it's like, hey, here's 11.
Yeah, it wasn't our fault, but I think that they could have maybe communicated that a little more clearly. But and then this is the funniest part to me. So let's just look at the quote unquote promo that launched this show, which I just feel like, I understand.
Not the best day.
I understand everybody's busy, and to be clear, we weren't involved with this. I understand everybody's busy, but you gotta do more when you put a show on TV than this. Just this is almost just asking for the show to fail. So check out this quote unquote promo. I mean, it's like, you're not going to watch this shit, but here it is. It's like, it's almost like angry at people for not watching it when you don't really give them a reason to watch it.
It's very meta that
It's
way.
pretty hilarious, though. But before we talk more about the show, let's look at the trailer that was made for the DVD that is actually sort of gives you a good idea of what the show's like. Check it out.
Tell me, why have you chosen an occupation that requires you to risk your life in order to earn a living?
For certain reasons, I once took the lives of 8 people who I considered to be very dear. And so, to appease the souls of those 8 people, I continue working as a bodyguard. And I will until I have saved 8 lives that are equal to theirs.
Your face reveals a woman of fine character. It is because you are so accomplished that I have come here to ask you this favor. I care not where you will go, but I ask you this. Please take this child with you and protect him from the Mikado's assassins for the rest of his life.
Spear wielder! Are you listening? You're not gonna get away like you did before! We'll do everything we can to bring you down! You've accomplished nothing dragging the prince all over this land! And we're putting an end to this game of yours!
Wanting to save the lives of others isn't a bad sentiment to have. So tell me, Balsa, how many lives have you saved so far?
Can we please drop this?
No, we can't. How many lives were taken compared to those saved? 10 people? How about 20 people? Or has the number hit 50 already?
When I take a job, I see it through to the end, regardless of the consequences. So no matter what happens, I'm not going to let you die.
So yeah, I like the show a lot. It's 26 episodes. You can get it on Hulu or other places, but I watched it on Hulu. It looks totally gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, for being almost 10 years old,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a bad looking show if it came out now.
Yeah. It looks awesome. The backgrounds are great. I like the pretty realistic character designs.
There is some marginal 3D work.
Yeah. Always back then. Kamiyama, who worked on Ghost in the Shell, worked on this, and I think it's like I was trying to think about why it didn't take off and get bigger, and I think it's because it's such a grounded sort of fantasy. It's weirdly, I don't know why they made it historic and like not actual historical Japan.
Right.
I guess so they could get away with a few things they wanted to do because there's magical elements and stuff. But like, it feels like when you're watching a old samurai movie for the most part. It's like,
Yeah, and there's no overarching villain. There's no like wizard who's there. Like it's
Everybody's
stay
got
alive,
their
day
reasons.
number 6.
yeah, everyone's got their reasons. It's very much a road trip show. It's very much about a journey, and even the fighting is pretty realistic. It's not like Dragon Ball Z. It's more like, as if it was a martial arts movie where it's a little over the top, but for the most part, they try to keep it
Somewhat realistic.
You're supposed to be wondering if she's going to make it out of each fight because she'll get wounded and she'll, her spear will mess up, or, there's all kinds of sort of more grounded reality things that happen. And it's more about the relationship between her and the young prince than pretty much anything else. And her determination to save his life because of the debt she feels she owes. So it's like kind of a melancholy show, and she's somewhat mad at herself, doesn't take any shit, the typical lone wolf.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really good show, and I'm sad that I'm glad, Adult Swim got to run the whole thing, but I'm sad that people don't talk about it anymore because I think it is one of the better fantasy anime of recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came out at a time when a lot of shows were coming out, and I think that particularly dub-wise, it was somewhat of a sputtering start.
Yeah, the dub is good though. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a good dub. Bang Zoom did the dub, and they always do a good job. And I don't know what the delay was, but I think that look, we did what we could. We ran it.
Yeah.
We didn't promote it. It seems like it wasn't
better
our,
than every other television network out there.
wasn't our job, but it seems like it could have been promoted a little better. But what are you going to do? They
But
showed
I guess
it.
we could have volunteered to do it.
They showed it
as
a
well,
bunch. Yes,
so
we could have volunteered to do it, but we didn't.
we were
So,
busy saving the world in other ways.
But I would say it's worth checking out if
Yeah,
you're
for
looking
sure.
for a good sort of solid fantasy anime that's not too long. Good 26, and it wraps up nicely, so there's not really a lot of dangling anything that I recall.
Yeah, they leave it open to, if it was a giant success, you could make a sequel, but it's not a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So check it out. Get a Hulu subscription. Don't be an asshole. So now let's talk about our question of the week, drafting off of that, which is, what's your favorite fantasy book? I don't know why we didn't say novel, but I guess we wanted to leave it if someone had a picture book or a manga.
Typically,
My favorite
we put
fantasy
the
book
least amount of
is The
thought
Giving Tree.
into the questions when we're setting them up to be posted. We put the most amount of thought into the questions in here when it's too late to actually change anything. So maybe that's a production error.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I don't think you're wrong. So I'm gonna start us off with an oldie but a goodie, which is, of course, for the real Lord of the Rings nerds, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion. I was let me see. When I first read Lord of the Rings when I was like 12. I had read The Hobbit when I was a kid, and then, or maybe I was 11, and I read Lord of the Rings and, became obsessed with it. So around the age of 13, I found out about the Silmarillion, which is basically it turns out after Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, his publisher was like, more, give us more, because The Hobbit was a big ass hit. So he said, well, I've got these notes, like this history of this world that the hobbits live in, that maybe that could be turned into something. So he sent them a very rough draft of the Silmarillion, and they rejected it. They were like, nah, it's bullshit.
No one wants to read the Farmer's Almanac of
Give me
Middle
something
Earth.
else. Give me something else. So he went back then and wrote The Lord of the Rings. But while he was working on The Lord of the Rings, he was writing the Silmarillion at the same time, because he kind of wrote it all at once. So the Silmarillion is basically all the back history that occurs leading up to the point at which Lord of the Rings begins. So it's the entire history of not only Middle Earth, but Valinor, which is sort of their version of heaven, the Undying Lands, and like the creation of the world, and the original of Valar and Maiar, which are kind of gods and demigods, and the elves and the original elf wars over these three jewels called the Silmarils, which are taken from two trees. It's a long story. It's like deep backstory, and it's very dense, and it's very much like, it's like reading, when I was 13, it felt like reading the Bible, but it was all...
That's all the Begat one.
Yeah. It's like reading Deuteronomy or Numbers, in the Bible.
I read it. My brother and I read The Hobbit, and then he was reading Lord of the Rings, and he was like, well, I have a Silmarillion, but that actually takes place before. And I was like, great. And I was like 10, and I started reading. I was like, nope.
Yeah.
Not reading that.
Yeah, I didn't make it through it when I was 13. I think
it's like reading Finnegan's Wake when you're 12.
Yeah, I made it like, I don't know, a quarter of the way through. So I reread it again in my 20s, and then it just clicked. Like, I love... I think one of the reasons Tolkien is, obviously the king of fantasy is because not only of the ideas and stuff, but just, or the message, but also the quality of writing. He has some passages that are just beautifully written. And I think a lot of his best writing as a writer is actually in the Silmarillion. Silmarillion's a tough read because his son, Christopher Tolkien, had to sort of piece it together after Tolkien's death. And he had to fill in the blanks in some parts where things didn't make sense because it was a work in progress. But I think...
Hang on, we got a scheduled system there.
I love that we can't get rid of that. We're a major media corporation doing a fucking show, and all we can do is be like, turn off virus scan. We have engineers who work here, and what their response is to shrug and go, we're going to do virus scans.
Do you think if we set our computer clock to Nova Scotia time, that
I don't
it would
know.
go at 9:05 every day?
You know what, though? I have a computer. Do you know how often virus scan comes up on my computer? 0 times. So somehow...
That's not good. You really should scan for
I
viruses.
know. Well, I do, but I do it on my own time. I don't have an automatic reminder interrupting me no matter what I'm doing. But that's AdultSwim.com, folks. That's how we roll. Anyway, so...
Streaming on AdultSwim.com near you.
The funny thing about the Silmarillion is I went online and looked just to see. I figured that since it's Lord of the Rings, that people had made fake trailers or done little animations, and there's a ton of stuff. But there's a whole cottage industry of fake Silmarillion movie trailers that use footage from Lord of the Rings movies and other movies. And I found a couple that are actually pretty damn good. So we're just going to... This will give you sort of an idea of what Silmarillion's like. A lot of epic shit. A lot of giant battles. A lot of elves killing each other. A lot of creation of Morgoth and giant spiders and monsters. So... just check this out. You won't really learn much, but you'll get a feel. So check this out. So that's a fantasy version of what would be that movie. The Silmarillion will never be made into a movie because...
I am looking forward to Peter Jackson's 17-part theatrical release of the Silmarillion.
Apparently, the Tolkien estate really hates the Lord of the Rings movies, and certainly, and with good reason, the Hobbit movies. And they have vowed that it was a mistake to sell the rights originally, and that they would never sell the rights to the Silmarillion under any circumstances. So, unless
because they got all that Lord of the Rings money, they don't need it anymore.
They feel like they didn't get their proper portion of that money. In fact, most of the people involved in that movie didn't get the proper portion of their money. New Line kept it all. But, so, I don't think we'll ever see a Silmarillion movie unless someone comes along to break that iron grip that the family has on the material, or changes their mind about, adapting it, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of great little stories in there. But anyway, I knew I was going to have to talk Lord of the Rings, and rather than talk Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, I thought I'd talk the Silmarillion just because it's a little bit lesser known. It's still very well known, but not as well known as the other books. So that's my first choice. For my second is a book by an author named China Miéville. I think I'm pronouncing it right. And this is the first of his books I've read, but I became a fan and pretty much have read everything he's written since. And that is Perdido Street Station. Perdido Street Station is a fantasy that takes place in a industrial capitalist steampunk society that also has magic. So it's like, imagine sort of England in the industrial age, sort of a big, huge city, dirty and filthy, a lot of poor people, a lot of, industry, and then mix that with like crazy monsters and magic. And the city is called New Krobazon. And it's really, the story is really convoluted, but it's essentially about a human sort of scientist who is asked by a guy, a race called Garuda, which are like bird people. The Garuda's wings have been removed by his own race for committing a crime. And he asks this sort of back alley scientist guy, who's our main character, if he would be willing to make new wings for him. So this leads him into a whole sort of conspiracy of all kinds of crazy shit that goes on. But the thing I love about China Miéville's writing is there's always like a million different crazy ass ideas that I think are pretty novel that I would never think of. And he just sort of, there's tons of shit in there that's like, oh yeah, and then there's this, and he doesn't even sort of get into it. He doesn't make a big deal out of it. It's just sort of presented as the way it is. And it's like like the main character is in love with a woman who's a race called the Khepri. The Khepri have humanoid bodies, but their heads are scarab beetles. So that's his girlfriend. She communicates by moving her beetle legs on her head and puffs of air from her whatever proboscis. But her body looks like a human woman's, and there's no like that's just the way it is. Oh yeah, it's a Khepri. There are these creatures who are like muscle called the cactae, and they're basically cactus people. So they're giant ass cactus men who are super strong. You can shoot them with bullets and it doesn't hurt them. And they use these weapons that are sort of like crossbows, but they shoot buzzsaws so they can chop off cactus limbs. There's all kinds of crazy shit. Like it's like that, and then there's vampires and werewolves, and like it's like he was like, you know what? I'm just gonna create a fantasy world with like every single thing I like. And then there's like Lovecraftian old gods that live under the sea, and there's ghosts, and there's airships, and it's like just gonna throw it all in there and just enjoy it all. So he's written 3 books in this world called Bass Lag is the name of the world, and they're all great. I think Perdido Street Station is the best one, but all 3 books are great. They all star different characters. It's not like an overarching fantasy narrative. It's basically deep focus on one city and then deep focus on another city, and then the last one is called Iron Council, and it's about a train. Then it's sort of like what was the movie that about the train that never stops that everyone lives on Snowpiercer. It's kind of like Snowpiercer but better. It's just about
Polar Express.
It's about it's like the Polar Express but not as fun. But it's about a train that goes all around the world and never stops, and people live on the train, and there's a whole society. And and all of his books have just insane ideas. He's way into parallel dimensions, and he's written some children's books. They're great. He just seems to never run out of ideas, and he's a socialist, so there's some political commentary in there. He's definitely into mixing real world ideas with fantasy, but it just felt new to me in a way that it wasn't like, oh yeah, so there's halflings, there's dwarves, oh here's your elven race or your analog to the elves, and there's your humans, like, and there's your orc analog. Like it very much is non-Tolkien influenced. He hates Tolkien, so he's trying to do something totally opposite, which I appreciate, even though I love Tolkien.
Seems a bit extreme, but yes.
Well, I mean, I think if you write fantasy, it would probably feel like, do I have to do the Tolkien shit? You know what I mean? Like, How do you do it differently? I think
it's like hating the Beatles as a musician. Makes sense.
I think other cultures, like especially Japan, have an easier time of breaking away from that European fantasy tradition that Tolkien solidified. I mean, you've got, King Arthur, if you want to go way back for European traditions, and Viking type stuff, and then you have Tolkien. So other cultures like China and Japan, they have their own, and India and every, non-white cultures have their own rich mythology to draw on. So Japanese fantasy shows can be like Soul Eater. They can be, that's a fantasy, but it's just has nothing to do with the typical fantasy tropes, but it's still fantasy. So I think as a European English writer, you're going to have a hard time getting out of Tolkien's shadow, and maybe sometimes the way people do that is just by pushing back really hard, So Perdido Street Station, if you've never read China Miéville, check them out. It's worth a thing. I'm going to just play you someone reading the first 2 minutes of the very beginning of the book. So check it out.
Veldt to scrub, to fields, to farms, to these first tumbling houses that rise from the earth. It has been night for a long time. The hovels that encrust the river's edge have grown like mushrooms around me in the dark. We rock, we pitch in the deep current. Behind me the man tugs uneasily at his rudder and the barge corrects. Light lurches as the lantern swings. The man is afraid of me. I lean out from the prow of the small vessel across the darkly moving water. Over the engine's oily rumble and the caresses of the river, small sounds, house sounds, are building. Timbers whisper, and the wind strokes thatch. Walls settle and floors shift to fill space. The tens of houses have become hundreds, thousands. They spread backwards from the banks and shed light from all across the plain. They surround me. They are growing. They are taller and fatter and noisier. Their roofs are slate. Their walls are strong brick. The river twists and turns to face the city. It looms suddenly, massive, stamped on the landscape. Its light wells up around the surrounds. The rock hills like bruised blood. Its dirty towers glow. I am debased. I am compelled to worship this extraordinary presence that has silted into existence at the conjunction of two rivers. It is a vast pollutant, a stench, a klaxon sounding. Fat chimneys retch dirt into the sky even now in the deep night. It is not the current which pulls us, but the city itself.
As read by Anton Chigurh.
Seems like a fun place to live. So my final choice, many of you will know, is the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. The first of which is The Golden Compass. You've read those, right?
I've read all these books. I read. Gil can read.
Gil can read? Oh, you never said anything about Perdido Street Station. How'd you like it?
I liked it. I thought it was good. It's funny hearing, not funny, but interesting. Like that just sounds like so much more of a bummer than when I was reading it in my head.
Sure.
It's just like,
well, I think he's
hearing that audiobook. Like if I was listening to it, I'd just be like slowly
dying,
crushed.
Yeah, that guy is trying to inhabit the character, the main character,
he does a great
who's
job.
bitter.
Like
the main character is bitter and tired of the city, but the book doesn't feel.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel
like
as oppressive as that was. That was just.
That's why I don't like listening to books.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't read every audiobook.
I'm just saying.
Harry Potter lived on Privet Lane.
Man, I can't listen to books. That makes me crazy. You listen to a lot of books.
Only when I'm like on a road trip. Like I can't, like Dana will listen to them just like going grocery shopping, and that's where I'm just like I can't pay attention or just like what? Stop talking to me. You're annoying me. But when I need
can't
to just
hear a human voice in my ear.
When I need to unplug and just drive for 8 hours, it's great.
So His Dark Materials. So basically, this trilogy came out 15 years ago or so, and they were young adult books, but they were also meant for adults, according to Philip Pullman. So,
young was in parentheses.
Young adult books. But basically, these are the story of parallel universes for Mars. The first one takes place in a world. The first part of the story takes place in a world where they haven't invented cars or fixed-wing aircraft. So there's just everyone uses like zeppelins. Airships are basically the thing everyone uses. So also somewhat of a steampunk thing. And in this world, the world is ruled by what's essentially an analog for the Catholic Church called the Magisterium. And it stars the main character of Lyra, I can't remember how they pronounce her name. And she gets something. She grows up in a monastery, and she gets visits from her uncle, who is somebody who's actually something more. But she gets whisked away by who ends up being her mother, who ends up being the villainess, at least of the first novel. And before she's taken, she's given a device called an alethiometer that sort of allows you to see the future if you know how to use it correctly. And nobody knows how to use it, but she does, instinctively. And then the big thing about this world that's really cool, I think, is the idea that everyone has their own aspect of themselves that is in the form of an animal, and they're called demons. So everyone has a demon who's their best friend for life, who basically represents aspects of their personality. And when you grow up, your demon will change into different kinds of animals until you reach puberty, at which point it settles into one particular animal form. So like the guy that comes to visit her, Azrael, his is like a tiger, I believe, and hers is a little ferret, and the queen, or the bad guy, her mom, is a golden monkey. And so nobody, like, if you touch someone else's demon, it's like nails on a chalkboard. They're considered like something that you can't they belong so much. They're so much a part of you.
It's a bad touch.
Anyone else touching it, hurts. So that's a pretty fascinating idea. And then in the second book, they get into this other parallel world and another main character that comes in from that world. And he has a thing called a subtle knife, which is so sharp it can cut a hole in your universe. And basically, the books are sort of they're very much about the idea of religion being bad. Philip Pullman's an avowed atheist, but it's like reading. For me, it's like reading the Chronicles of Narnia. Like it's a little heavy-handed at times, but
it's the flip side of
you don't have to agree to be able to enjoy the story, which is a wonderful story. And the book ends with basically them coming after Metatron, who's the main angel who basically runs heaven, and God is sort of absentee and retired. And it's like they literally go to heaven and hell by the end of the books. I mean, they call it other things, but that's what it's supposed to be. But it's just a really well-written trilogy. It's got some really cool ideas, which is why I was really sad when the movie came out for The Golden Compass, and it looked like they had some real money behind it, and they had a filmmaker, Chris Weitz, who was not a bad filmmaker, who cared about the material, and they just shat the bed. Like, it's too big of a book with too many big ideas to be contained easily in a 2.5-hour movie. It should have been a miniseries or something. They got a lot of it right in terms of the feel of it, and the casting is terrific, and the direction is great, the effects are good, but there's just there's no like soul to the movie. Like, they're just blowing through things too fast. And then the movie ends not where the book ends, which the book has a terrific ending that leaves the door totally open for the next one. They end it way earlier, like they just ran out of cash, and they're just like, dun, and it ends. Like, it doesn't make any sense where they ended it. And audiences did not connect with it.
Yeah, I think they went so far out of their way to not make it religious undertones that it sort of...
They kind of blew it.
Yeah.
They were worried because when they made it, the church was, of course, raising hell and crying their eyes out about it. So they got all freaked out about it. And I don't say that the church killed it. I think their own cowardice killed it. But I also think maybe it shouldn't have been a huge budget movie to compete with Harry. It's never going to compete with Harry Potter. Like, it's not designed for that.
Right.
I think it would
There's only 3 books. It can't.
I think it could make an awesome miniseries on a cable channel or pay TV network or Netflix or something, but I don't think it should ever be giant, big budget movies. But even so, it's worth checking out how well they got the world. They really nailed the look and feel of the world when you're reading the book. So we're going to watch the trailer for The Golden Compass, and you can see and think about what might have been.
There is a world where witches rule the northern skies, where ice bears are the bravest of warriors, and where every human is joined with an animal spirit who is as close to them as their own heart.
Are we going to see the child?
I should think so.
But this world is dominated by the Magisterium, which seeks to control all humanity, and whose greatest threat is a golden compass and the one child destined to possess it.
What's this?
It's the golden compass, Lyra. I feel you're meant to have it.
But what's it for?
It lets you glimpse what is to come. It's of the utmost importance, perhaps to all creation.
Who's she?
Dunno. I have to go back to the north very soon. Perhaps you should come along.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Go to the north?
North? It's cold up there.
Are you familiar with the process of the witches?
You think she's that child? When you were leaving the college, the Master of Jordan gave you something, didn't he? Give it to me.
I don't want to. And it's her. She's running the Magisterium.
I'll find you, Lyra.
These are the chiefs of the Egyptian families. You're under our protection.
If I was on the kind of scout that I reckon you're on, I'd hire myself an armored bear.
Eric Bannister!
I will serve you in your campaign until you have a victory.
She is in possession of the Golden Compass. She must be found.
The Magisterium seeks to control every world. You will need all your skill and courage.
Miss Lyra, are you ready to fly?
When the time comes, we will strike the strength of them.
Do you value your life? Come no further. Come, Lyra! I'm not yours! I'll never be yours!
Take that!
When my
I like
dogs
at the
fight,
end, it
it's
just
like
goes.
it's the bears. They do the same thing. It always makes me think of it.
Yeah.
When they play
Except they're-
fight, they don't really
except
tear
they're
each other
wimps.
apart.
Yeah, in the trailer feels very old school too. They don't have trailers anymore where a voice is like "in a world." That's a very much "in a world" trailer. But that was when they were making fantasy movies left and right, like trying to get that hot Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings money. Just get that money,
get it out there.
And it didn't work out, but hopefully we'll see a miniseries or something soon enough. So those are some of my favorite fantasy books.
Nice. Up first for me is The Lord of the Rings, which Jason touched on prior when talking about the Silmarillion. I do like that Tolkien's plan was like, yeah, I'll write it's the other way. I'll write 2 9,000-page books, and people will love them. One will be the Silmarillion, and one will be the Lord of the Rings. And the publisher's like, are you out of your fucking mind? So then they split it up into 3 books, which is really 2 books in each book. So it's super confusing, but there. So I first read the Lord of the Rings probably late middle school, early high school. After having read The Hobbit, and
is that Legolas in that? That is Legolas. Legolas didn't look like for some reason it didn't look like Legolas to me. And who's that? That would be Aragorn with his Aragorn with like a
that's
kind of
Errol
like
Flynn.
medieval pirate look. Obviously, that's Boromir because he's got the horn. I'm just curious. The halflings look very childlike, especially all the way at the end. There is probably Pippin.
Yeah,
he's the smallest one, and sweet ass hat on the dwarf. Emily's hat. Sorry, I like that painting though. I do like the painting. I just think it's funny.
Why do you think Legolas is so worried about where Gimli's looking?
He's
like everyone's looking
right
off
at
in
the
the
camera.
It's like, don't look at the camera. Background action.
Yeah, he's looking right at the camera. Hurry up, halflings! Damn.
But yeah, I mean, Lord of the Rings, pretty much.
What are you gonna do?
It was
Lord of the Rings.
How many times do you think you've read Lord of the Rings? The 3 books.
I read it every couple of years.
Yeah, I feel like
probably read it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I think I've probably 4 or 5. 6 feels like a lot, but
I've read,
probably so.
But I've read the Children of Húrin and Lúthien and Beren and Lúthien, all the other ones. So now I sort of go back to those since I know Lord of the Rings so well. And the movies are so great. Sometimes I'm like, I'm in the mood for Lord of the Rings, and I just watch them.
Yeah, it's like I don't have
14
2 months.
Yeah.
I have I'm gonna got 8 hours. So this clip is basically the part of the movie intro that, if you're not familiar, it blows my mind. I'm sure that there's not anyone out there that's not. But this
there are young people who haven't seen these movies.
World builds that are watching this show. You think?
Absolutely. If you're 16 years old, these movies came out
when you were
too young to go see them.
All right. Well, you should.
We're old as shit.
It's true.
Go see the Lord of the Rings movies.
Should. So this will be. You can walk in 2 minutes late because this is going to knock out the first 2 minutes of.
This is sort of the backstory.
Yeah, this sort of builds the world.
This is Lord of the Rings for dummies.
This is like exactly. It's the Cliff's Notes version, which is crazy that they made 3 3-hour movies and they're like, okay, now we're going to cram another 2-hour movie into the first 5 minutes. Here we go. So let's check this out.
The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it. It began with the forging of the great rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings. 7 to the dwarf lords, great miners and craftsmen of the mountain halls. And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men, who above all else desire power. For within these rings was bound the strength and will to govern each race. But they were all of them deceived, for another ring was made. In the land of Mordor, in the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring to control all others. And into this ring he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. One ring to rule them all.
I'm yelling at Sean because he was saying one of our technical guys said his big thing when he was young was Dragonlance, not Lord of the Rings, which I read Dragonlance. Those are fun books, but they are not good books. And once I discovered Lord of the Rings, I realized, this is where all that shit came from, only way better.
Yeah, except
Sean,
the grown-up version.
Sean's Arrested Development requires he goes back to Dragonlance as his...
Every 3 years.
As his Ne Plus Ultra.
I reread.
I really like Dragonlance.
Lord of the Rings, fairly well-known, I would say. Pretty good books.
A little well-known. A few people have heard of it.
They should make a movie.
I think it's a good idea. Didn't you just show a clip? I have good news for you.
So
rewind this show 2 minutes ago.
The Lord of the Rings didn't feel as much like cheating picking the trilogy since it was originally conceived as one book. This next one is significantly more cheating.
Gil always cheats on this,
but
on any of our questions.
I'm going to
hone
in
to notice
a little bit.
My mom says I pick on Gil too much. Mom, Gil cheats every time. We make rules, we have questions, and then he just does whatever the fuck he wants. And then when I call it out, he's like, "Who cares, man?
Who cares, man?"
See, he doesn't follow the rules. I follow the rules.
Well, congratulations.
It's book, not series.
Didn't you just do His Dark Materials?
I talked about The Golden Compass. I mentioned it was a trilogy. I talked about one book.
So
I'm giving you Lord of the Rings because you're right. It was supposed to be one book.
So this is, full disclosure, slightly more cheating, but we're going to get to my favorite of the books, but that's not what I'm going to show.
Yeah, see?
There's
layers.
Yeah.
Gil's a complicated man and a deep thinker, so he can't there's no easy answers.
It's not a black and white world.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember the next line of that stupid-ass song. Anyway, it's the Dark Tower trilogy.
It's not a trilogy.
I mean, Dark Tower series.
Is septology?
Is it septology?
There's 7
There's
books.
7, but is that an actual word?
There's sextology is a 6
there
books.
is.
So wouldn't that be...
I don't know.
Septet? A septet.
I like
septology.
I'm going to get behind septet. The clip that I have is a kid's book report on the Gunslinger.
Nice.
Which
I like it very much. He kills a lot of people.
Is pretty amazing. The Gunslinger is not actually my favorite book of the Dark Tower series, but was the first one that I read because I started at the beginning.
As it should be.
I started reading Stephen King in probably 7th-ish grade, and I read The Gunslinger probably 8th grade, maybe 9th grade. So I read The Gunslinger, and then The Drawing of the Three was out, so I read that, and then I had to wait for The Wastelands, because that came out my
4 years later.
junior year in high school. And that book ends on a super cliffhanger to the point at the end where I was like, what the fuck? I waited 3 years for this? And then I was like, well, it's only 3 more years. And it was like 7 more years.
6 or 7 more years, yeah.
And then at that point, I'd sort of grown up and was started doing the like reread. So The Wastelands at the time was my least favorite book because it was the least satisfying of the 3. And then Wizard
That's the one with Blaine the train,
and it ends like literally like, okay, we're about to have a battle.
That's right.
So then the next book, Wizard and Glass, at the time that I read
That's the one that frustrated me because you waited 7 years.
I liked actually that book the most because at that point I was like, all right, he's clearly in this for the long haul. And it wasn't, I didn't have although any series book always ends with, I'm almost done with the next one. And then it's like 8 years later. So I'd made my peace with it and realized that maybe I wasn't going to hear the end of the story, especially when he got hit by the car and was in the hospital. I don't remember where it was in the series. I just remember it was like
there was
people were freaking the fuck out that he was going to die and no one was going to know. He talks about like
that's why
death row inmates and terminally ill people would write him and be like, I promise you I will not tell soul.
Just tell me
what
happened.
How it ends. And he was just like, nah. Which is, you got to respect.
Die not knowing, fucker.
And the end of the 7th book, The Dark Tower, I read on a plane, and there's an epilogue, and then there's like an author's note leading into it. And
don't read it if you don't read it. You might not like it.
It says my story is over, but if you want to read some more, there's a little bit more. Or I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but it was basically that. And I closed the book and I sat on the plane for about 10 minutes and was like, well, clearly I'm going to read this. And I was like, oh, maybe this is a good place to end the story. And then I read it, and I honestly don't know. It was like I felt like it was so well done that you simultaneously felt pissed that you read it and happy that you did.
It didn't bother me at all. Yeah, I don't mind the ending. I thought it was great. I didn't have a problem. But I was super pissed at Wizard and Glass though when that came out because I was like, you made me wait 7 years
and you didn't even finish what they were doing in the other,
and you're not finishing the other narrative, and now it's a 400-page flashback, which was cool,
which was good. And
it's a great story.
My favorite moment in all the books is in that one where the guy who pretends like he's the gunslinger gets stolen by a young Roland who's just like, no, do it or talking's over, do it or die. And the guy's just like, knows, he's like, and pisses himself. So I would say Wizard and Glass is my favorite of the books, but I honestly, I need to go reread them again now that because I reread them.
You shouldn't have picked it for this because you don't know what your favorite book.
No, I do. I still think it's Wizard and Glass, but it may change. Wizard and Glass is my favorite Dark Tower book. I've reread them leading up to the releases, except I didn't do that for Song of Susanna, I guess, because they
came out They came out
so
within
close
6 months of each other, every 6 months.
So I just finished it.
Yeah.
So now. And I don't think I care to do it before the movie comes out, but I do want to reread them all and come out and reevaluate.
I'll reread them all before the movie comes out,
and we'll have.
I want to do
second round version.
You can find online because the Dark Tower books are like a linchpin of a lot of Stephen King's writing, and there's a ton of other books that are basically Dark Tower side stories that connect. So like there's From a Buick 8 or The Regulators or. There's Hearts in Atlantis, which is just one long Dark Tower side story. There's Black House. There's like Talisman. Apparently, ties back. So I
feel like some of that is like, oh, and some of it is like,
some of it is, some of it isn't. But there's like even in Dolores Claiborne, there's a part with the eclipse, and she sees the tower.
Right.
And Insomnia, he sees the tower. So I'm not going to read those where there's like one mention like, and he saw a tower, and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's part of the same multiverse. But there are some like From a Buick 8 and Hearts in Atlantis and Black House are like really directly tied in. They're literally about characters that end up in the Dark Tower.
Yeah, so there's compendiums of everything, and
I'm gonna read them all. And there's a bunch of short stories. There's a bunch of great
through the
gunslinger short stories.
The keyhole or whatever.
That went through the keyhole and the Little Sisters of Illyria. So I'm gonna read all of it in order. I don't know that I'll do it before the upcoming Gunslinger movie, but somewhere around there.
Yeah. But Stephen King wrote it. I guess I can't remember if it's in front of the first Gunslinger. He went back and rewrote part of the Gunslinger Because as he got into it, he realized that there were some things that didn't really necessarily jive. So he had a, I guess, writer's edition that was later on. In the introduction of that, he talks about being 19 and seeing the Man with No Name trilogy movies and reading Lord of the Rings. And he's like, I want to make Man with No Name Western fantasy Lord of the Rings books.
And then he made it post-apocalyptic too, which is even better.
So it's pretty much perfect wheelhouse of ass-kicking for me. Wizard and Glass favorite, check out this kid's book report on The Gunslinger, and then we'll come back and Jason can tell me what an asshole I am.
Good deal.
My name is John Chambers. You can call me Jake.
Come now, gunslinger, or catch me never.
Go then. There are other worlds than these.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Stickamation Studios.
That kid
YouTube
did a
page
great
is
job.
Pretty great animations on there. Check it out. So last for me, it's a bit of a departure. This isn't even really a series of books. This is just one author that I really like.
There's.
No, I'm just kidding. This is just actually.
There's only like two though.
Mostly, this is not cheating. I'm focusing primarily on Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which does expand out, but for the purposes of this discussion, I don't want to break the rules again, so we're just going to stick with American Gods. Which
you're a true hero.
Thank you for recognizing me. I'm glad that
you've done
your
well.
mother's advice is
You've done well.
Wearing off on you. Thank you,
You've
Mr.
done well. My mom taught me how to pick on people, so Mom, tough shit. You made me this way.
Fair enough. Tough to argue. So
and I'm proud.
The book came out in early 2000s, 2001, and then there was a 10th anniversary that came roughly 10 years after that. That was pretty considerably longer.
Expanded
edition. And there's a full cast radio play for those of you who enjoy hearing audiobooks. It's actually a really good audiobook because it's not just one person's voice in your ear. You get to hear a multitude.
Play. That's terrific.
But the idea behind American Gods is basically that gods exist because people believe in them and that the lack of belief diminishes them. So the gods that exist in America were brought over from the old world in various forms. So there's multiple forms of gods, specifically in the States, is what they focus on, hence American Gods. And the main human that you follow around is Shadow, who is getting out of prison and finds out that his wife was cheating on him with his best friend and also then dies in a car wreck. So he has a pretty bummer first day out of the joint. He gets picked up by Mr. Wednesday, who turns out to be not a man. If you haven't read it, I won't totally spoil it because they do take a little bit of time to get to it. But basically, it comes down to a fight between the old gods and the new gods of technology and media. And the fight takes place at Rock City, where all great American conflicts have happened in the larger Chattanooga area. Ruby Falls really gets to shine in American Gods. I don't know why they don't really hook up Ruby Falls, but that is what it is. But I really liked this book. I liked that it was an Englishman's take on America, and there's some sort of outside perspective things. It does feel very much like you're traveling around to the different places that are actual real places. It's a good mix between, potentially, depending on where your belief system lies, fanciful beings and real places in this real war that takes place. And they're making it into a Starz, I guess, full TV series.
From Brian Fuller.
Yeah, so of Hannibal fame. So this is the trailer for said television series.
I love you. Something feels weird.
Shadow, we're going to be releasing you a couple of days early. There's no good way to say this, so I'll put it plain. Your wife, she died in the early hours of this morning.
So what would I call you if I was so inclined?
Shadow Moon. What might I call you?
What's today?
Wednesday.
Today's my day. I could use a fellow like you. You're my man now.
You know who he is? Who he really is?
He does not know our world.
I'm easing him in.
I think I'm losing my mind. They told me you died.
Who said I died, puppy?
Seems you have a choice. Either the world is crazy, or you are. Come with me.
Looks good.
Yeah, psyched.
Terrible ass song in the trailer.
Sure.
So let's check out our Adult Swim Facebook top 5 fantasy books. Your choices were The King Killer Chronicles, which I haven't gotten to, but I want to read. The Dark Tower, Bible Black, Stranger in a Strange Land. I think of more as science fiction, but sure. And the Discworld series. Again, it's a series. You got to pick one. People.
It's fine.
Anyway, Toonami Facebook. Let's check it out. We have Aragon. Y'all, read more books. Damn. Aragon? Your favorite fantasy was written by a 14-year-old?
Sean put this
Get a
series
grip.
together.
Yeah, I think Sean made that one. The Berserk. I think that just is supposed to be Berserk, but I don't know. The Wheel of Time. I've read those. They start good. They get bad. Lord of the Rings and the Tortall series, which I've never heard of, but I'm going to go check out. Thanks, guys, for voting. Thank you for voting. And please always go to facebook.com/Toonami to vote on the question of the week for this show. So let's talk about next week's, our sneak peek for this week. And that is, the first one we're going to do is a music video that we are showing in tomorrow night's Toonami. And this is from DJ Mustard featuring Nicki Minaj and Jeremiah. And it's a really cute little video that they allowed us to premiere. So check it out.
Trying to get up in my head, now that's a headache. I just want to make the best shake. She want to spend some time, now that's a Rolex. Shot her at the like it's stolen. Met her at the West End with the best day. Kissing, they was sweating, doing lip things. Had to get up in that lit thing, yeah, the lit thing. Let her write the mic, yeah, no lip sync. They say that it last call, so let ball. I'm tryna have that on or that paw. Throw it back like retro, like it's retro. Baby, let's go, girl, let's go. Take it to my room, yeah. Ain't no need to talk with it. Throw me in the lights, oh, baby, I know what to do. Yeah. Give her what she want, now she want all the time on, baby, don't hurt me. You know I like it naughty. When they hit me, well, it's sexy. Won't let me if you let me. Don't hurt me. You know I like it naughty. When they hit me, well, it's sexy. Won't let me if you let me.
Tryna get up in my head, now that's a headache. I just wanna fool and get my
KK, you wanna spend some time, that's a role. I'ma ride a sea like it's stolen. Bet I'm in the hills out in LA. Took me for a cruise, yeah, Penelope. Had to sit up on that big thing, super duper freak, yeah, like Rick James. They say that it's last call for that bar. Tryna get that peach mix, Moscato. Make it clap like when the home team score. Baby, don't you hurt me like before. Take it to my room, yeah. Ain't no need to talk when there's thing in your mouth down south, baby. You know what to do with it. Gave him what he want, now he wanna hit your girl all the time. Oh, baby, don't
hurt me, hurt me, hurt me. You know I like it naughty, naughty, naughty. When you hit me, well, it's sexy, sexy, sexy. Only when if you let me, let me, let me. Don't hurt me, hurt me, hurt me. You know I like it naughty, naughty, naughty. When you hit me, well, it's sexy, sexy, sexy. Only when if you let me, let me, let me.
All these bitches begging me to pass the baton. All these bitches trying to fit my crown in my wand. They just still my sons, get your sonogram on. In just a nick of time, I did the cover of Time. Getting $1 million just to stand there and rhyme. Even if you was Curry, bitch, there's still a LeBron. But let's face it, I'm Curry with rings like LeBron. Added my rings up, that's Mike Jordan. I told this when I switched my flow 4 times. I'd be damned if a bitch can eat off mine. Well, this cake make a broke but can beat off, huh? I'm just looking for a man who could be B.O.Y.
Don't hurt me, hurt me, hurt me. You know I like it naughty, naughty, naughty. When you hit me, well, it's sexy, sexy, sexy. Only when if you let me, let me, let me. Don't hurt me, hurt me, hurt me. You know I like it naughty, naughty, naughty. When you hit me, well, it's sexy, sexy, sexy. Only when if you let me, let me, let me.
I love that video. I hope you guys do too. Next up, we're going to do a little promo for our One Punch Man marathon coming this Labor Day weekend. So here is that. Check out our One Punch marathon promo.
Get caught up Labor Day weekend.
Traditionally, Labor Day is a time to relax, kick back, and watch people get punched in the face. So Toonami's running the first 7 One Punch Man episodes back to back to back.
Put some pants on.
Get caught up with the One Punch Man Labor Day Marathon.
Come forth and fight me!
I'm right here.
Next Saturday, starting at 11:30.
Bring it on!
Only Toonami on Adult Swim.
Master!
And then finally, we have a topical promo for One Punch Man Episode 7 premiering tomorrow night on Toonami. So get a little sneak peek of Episode 7 right here.
On the next all-new episode of One Punch Man.
So it's you, the fraud who takes credit for work done by Class S heroes to jump the rankings. Look at you gloating, thinking you've actually saved these people. The other heroes would have done a way better job without your help. You're no hero. Give it up.
One Punch Man, Saturday at midnight.
You're done. I give up. I give up.
You're kidding, right?
And finally, we have this week's Adult Swim single, which came out Wednesday from the amazing Vince Staples. This song actually came from his album. It was the last song on his last album, but it was only 30 seconds. So I reached out to Vince and said, "Is there a longer version of this song?" And he said, "Actually, yeah, I have a 4-minute version. I just faded that one out at 40 seconds because I'm weird." So he gave us that track, and it's amazing. So thanks, Vince. So check out this jam from Vince Staples. You can get it at adultswim.com/singles. Here it is.
Good morning, hope you had a good time last night. I need money from everybody, motherfucker better pay your tax. Now I can change your life, fuck what's wrong, fuck what's right. What you want, what you like, your world been mine. These niggas getting paid over there, niggas got it made over there. I'm finna bring the gang in the gauge over there. I'm down for the front page rage, I swear. Nigga, who are you? Another fucking monkey in the zoo.
All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed a trip down fantasy lane and Gil's cheating ass.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being so nice to me, Jason.
Yeah, as always.